I'm here. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Our topic today is about light. Now, light is all around us. In fact, we are bathed in it. We see with it. We take photosynthesis with it. Most importantly, I think, for many people, they identify who they are with how they look. You know, without light, there would be no image. There would be no self. And if you have no self, you have no being. Light is really important. However, there's a part of light that is hidden from our view. It's a small part. Let's talk about it now. There's a world of life which has the ability to produce its own light. This ability has evolved numerous times across the tree of life. It's not a universal ability. If it were, we would be walking light bulbs around. But some organisms do this. They're able to take chemicals and through a series of reactions produce light. Now, this is called bioluminescence. It's been said that 1/2 of the species on Earth are bioluminescent, or at least can produce a flash of light. Most of them are bacteria. Some are fungi, some are algae, some are higher organisms like the firefly. It's thought that there are over 2 million species capable of producing light. Now, I've seen estimates that go much higher than that, but I think that's a pretty good one. The reason these organisms use light is quite diverse. It could be for camouflage. It could be to attract prey. It could be to attract mates. It could be to distract predators. It could be to communicate. It could be to ward off other animals. There are so many reasons why an organism would want to do this. But it's interesting because light travels 186,000 miles per second. And it takes, depending on what's going on, anywhere from 1 to several milliseconds for light to get from point A to point B. So even though light is fast, there's still time for something to happen in between. Let me tell you about one of my favorite examples. It's this little copepod. Copepod is a zooplankton that lives in the ocean, and they're incredibly abundant. There are lots of them in the water column. They feed on phytoplankton. And when they feed on phytoplankton, they actually glow for a brief period of time. Now, they don't glow constantly. They only glow when they're feeding. And the way they do it is they have these little light organs that hang down underneath their gut. And this is the phytoplankton that they've just consumed. And this is what the phytoplankton looks like under the microscope. Isn't that beautiful? What's happening is the copepod is eating the phytoplankton, and it's mixing it up with chemicals. In particular, it's mixing it up with a chemical called luciferin. And as they mix these two things together, light gets produced. That's how the copepod glows. Now, why does the copepod do this? Well, it turns out that the copepod is being preyed upon by a fish, and the fish hunts at night. So the copepod has evolved this way to not be seen. It's a counter-illumination. It's using the light of the phytoplankton to cancel out its own light, making it invisible to the predator. Now the fish is trying to see the copepods, but it doesn't see them. And so the copepods survive and pass on their genes to the next generation. There's another organism that does something similar. It's a jellyfish called a crystal jelly. Now, crystal jellies live in the oceans of the world. They're clear, they're bell-shaped, float along in the water column, they pulse, and they have unfired stinging cells. They're beautiful, almost alien-like organisms. They're also bioluminescent. However, they're bioluminescent in a slightly different way. They don't carry around luciferin. Instead, what they do is they wait until they're eaten. The thing that eats them most commonly is a fish. When they're eaten by a fish, they explode. They burst, and they release their unfired stinging cells into the fish. And those stinging cells actually glow, and this glowing goes on for hours. And what this does to the fish is it blinds it, and it makes it disoriented and confused. So while the jellyfish isn't using light to see itself, it's using light to make its predator not see. Now, light is also used by organisms to find each other. One of the best-known examples of this is the firefly. And fireflies are found throughout the northern hemisphere. They come out at night. They fly around flashing. That flash is light. They're using that light to find other fireflies to mate with. Each species has a slightly different flash pattern, and the flash pattern is species-specific. So if you see a certain flash, you know exactly who it is. And then the females will respond with their own flash. The males looking for a mate will then respond back, and they, have a conversation back and forth with flashes of light. Sometimes there are imposters. There are some beetles that aren't fireflies that mimic the flash pattern of a female firefly. They're trying to trick the male fireflies. They're trying to trick them into thinking they're a female so they can eat them. Fireflies aren't the only ones that do this, by the way. There are fungi that do this as well. Take this fungus, for instance. This fungus is called a myxomycete. Myxomycetes are often called slime molds, but they're not actually molds. They're single-cell organisms. They're giant single cells, and they can move. And they move by using pseudopodia. Pseudopodia are basically like arms that reach out and grab onto something and then pull the rest of the body towards it. They're very slow-moving. They move at a rate of about 2 millimeters per day. 2 millimeters per day. If they were human size, they'd be moving about 15 feet per year. But this is how they move. They move around looking for food. And when they sense food, they start to glow. And they glow by using the same mechanism that the copepod and the crystal jelly and the firefly uses. They mix luciferin with oxygen, and they produce light. And the light helps them grow towards the food. And when they get the food, they actually eat the food, and they incorporate the light into their bodies, and they grow larger. There's another organism that uses light to find food. It's a dinoflagellate. Dinoflagellates are these beautiful organisms that live in the ocean. They have to flagella. They spin around like a top when they swim. They're photosynthetic, and they have a nucleus. They're eukaryotes, and they actually glow. And they glow because they have these little light organs inside of them. And in these light organs is a pigment that's very similar to chlorophyll. And this pigment absorbs blue, green light, and red light. And that allows the dinoflagellate to see in those wavelengths. Basically, it sees blue, green, and red. And this is important because the dinoflagellate is a predator. It feeds on bacteria. The bacteria emits light. And the dinoflagellate is able to sense where the bacteria is emitting light, and it goes towards it, and it eats it. So there's a whole bunch of examples of bioluminescence. It's used for defense, it's used for offense, it's used for finding a mate, it's used for finding food, it's used for communication, it's used for camouflage. When you look at all of these different examples, you can see that light is used in a very similar manner regardless of what kingdom the organism is in. For example, bacteria might use light to attract a mate. Fungi might use light to attract a mate. A plant might use light to attract a mate, and a firefly, an insect, might use light to attract a mate. Even though these organisms are completely different, they're using light in a very similar manner. You know, this isn't surprising. Maybe you could argue that maybe all living things are trying to solve the same problems. Maybe all living things are trying to find food, find a mate, and avoid being eaten. Maybe using light is just a simple solution to some very complex problems. Now, light is not only emitted by these organisms, light is also emitted from within these organisms. Light can be emitted from the depths of a cell, from the mitochondria. When the electron transport chain is operating at full capacity, it pumps out protons. These protons build up an electrochemical gradient, and that potential energy in the gradient is released by ATP synthase. As it's released, there's a small portion of that energy that gets converted into light, and we call that bioluminescence. It's not a lot of light, but it's detectable. You can detect it with special cameras. So when we look at the bioluminescence of organisms, we're seeing light that's emitted from the depths of a cell. We're seeing light that's emitted from chemical reactions. We're seeing light that's emitted from the interaction between an organism and its environment. What we're seeing is a very small portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're seeing visible light. Visible light is a very small portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. Radio waves, microwaves, infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, and gamma rays. These are all part of the electromagnetic spectrum. However, we're only seeing a small part of it. But what if instead of only seeing visible light, what if we had instruments that allowed us to see all parts of the electromagnetic spectrum? What if we had instruments that allowed us to see radio waves, microwaves, infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, and gamma rays? What kind of world would we be living in? How would we interact with other organisms? Would we be able to understand each other better? Think about it. All of these organisms that we've talked about, all of these examples of bioluminescence, what if we didn't see them? What if we didn't have eyes? What kind of world would we be living in? I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a like. Subscribe to my channel. All right. And if you really enjoy my content, consider supporting me. Until next time, I'm here.